Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and thank you for joining today's webinar introducing RAD Studio 10.1 Berlin. And my name is Brandon Schopp. I'm a Senior Director of Product Management here at Embarcadero, and as always, I have Serena DuPont and Marco Cantu from the Product Management team with me. Today we're going to focus on first talking about RAD Studio today. Then we will transition into what's new in RAD Studio 10.1 Berlin and talk about some of the new features, technical details, and do a few demos. First, Embarcadero's focus now is 100% on developer tools. The database tools, which were part of Embarcadero, are now underneath the Idera brand and portfolio. Let's now talk about RAD Studio. If you're not already familiar with RAD Studio is the fastest way to develop cross-platform native applications with flexible cloud services and broad Internet of Things or IoT connectivity. RAD Studio allows for fast visual development by providing powerful VCL controls for Windows 10 and enabling FMX development for Windows, Mac, and mobile. Embarcadero offers the best Windows component library out there. With our last release, we put out extensive support for Windows 10, including support for Windows RT integration, style controls and components, and other features and functions. RAD Studio allows you to create cross-platform native apps that you write in the UI once and you can customize at any time and deploy anywhere. We support 4 different operating systems as well as 32 and 64-bit architectures across Intel and ARM CPUs. RAD Studio is truly platform independent and cloud ready. We provide Amazon Web Services, or AWS, and Azure support for access to storage, tables, and queuing, as well as backend as a service providers including Parse and Kinve. RAD Studio provides REST and HTTP client libraries for direct access, as well as NoSQL database components including full support for MongoDB. Embarcadero is one of the few full-stack application development platforms that provides broad IoT connectivity, extending your desktop and mobile apps with Internet of Things capabilities, including support for Bluetooth, Bluetooth LE, and Wi-Fi, as well as ready-to-use out-of-the-box IoT component support. With our beacon fence technology, we provide proximity awareness as well as sensor data collection, whether you're creating a simple application for a couple of users or an enterprise-class application for thousands of users, Embarcadero has you covered. With FireDAC, you have optimized database component access across all of the major database technologies out there. We also provide an enterprise service architecture with our RAD server product, as well as a full set of REST APIs. Just as the name implies, RAD Studio enables rapid application development, meaning faster development with solid architecture. RAD Studio delivers 5 times the speed of development and deployment across multiple desktops and mobile operating systems, both on-prem or in the cloud and across multiple different database technologies and platforms.
Thanks, Brandon. Hi, this is Marco, and I'm going to continue covering specifically the new features in Berlin. I'll do the first part of the session, and then Serena will join me with some of the other features and capabilities of the new product. So what's in 10.1 Berlin in terms of new features? We have a couple of core themes. The new install experience is certainly the most visible and relevant. We have many significant improvements throughout the entire native tool chains. We have improvements in the compilers, language, RTL, DCL, FireMonkey. That's quite a lot of things new in FireMonkey. We have Internet of Things support with new components and new capabilities that have been added to the product to simplify the development of applications that interact with devices. And we have significant additional features, from improvements in the developer productivity to enhancements in quality, performance, and the product stability overall. And specifically around the improvements, we wanted to mention the new updated drivers for FireDAC for a significant number of enterprise databases. So what about the new install experience? I think the installation was not the nicest thing in the product. The installer was monolithic, quite slow and not flexible. The point that we wanted was not just improve the installer, but really create a completely new experience. The product gets installed in an extremely minimal, reduced configuration that really takes a minute to get up and running, and then you can start picking the features, the compilers, the platforms, the capabilities that you want to add to the core empty Bareborn IDE. This is significantly better for a trial because you might want to do a trial experience only on one platform or two, but also as a developer you don't need to install the entire product upfront, but you can install features as you start needing them. The UI is completely different. Again, as I mentioned, there is a 180 megabytes installation. That is not just the installer, it's actually the product itself that gets installed. After that step is done, you do have a working IDE. It will automatically start this platform selection. You pick the platforms. There are a bunch of additional options that are other core features in the product, from the help to the demos, and you can again pick a few and then follow up and go back to that same screen. That is a screen that's available in the IDE. Now we also have the traditional installer. If you are downloading the ISO image, you still get the traditional installer with the old model. You will not get the feature selection in the IDE because that's one model or the other. So you can pick and choose. The new installer is significantly faster, like 20-30% faster overall. And again, it's quite flexible in terms of what you install and when you get it going. So we really recommend you using the new installer, leveraging that experience, and let us know how you like it. The native platform enhancements come throughout different portions of the technology. Of course, we are shipping the same compilers that we were shipping in 10 Seattle for both Object Pascal and C++, for Windows, Mac, Android, iOS, in different combinations and versions. And the majority of the compilers is based on LLVM, although we still have some of the traditional compilers as part of these 14 compilers that ship with the product. In the C++ side, we have a few native enhancements to the toolchain. We've upgraded all compilers to CLang 3.3, all compilers that are based on LLVM to CLang and LLVM 3.3. That means the same level of C++11 language support throughout the platforms. That's quite significant. Also, to leverage the C++ features, you need to be able to mix and match Delphi RTL classes or core library classes with the language features on the C++ side. We already had support for Lambda in 10 Seattle, but now we are adding to this the ability to use STL iterators for Delphi types. And I do have a short demo of that I want to share with you. In this very simple demo, what I'm doing is creating a dynamic array with some preset data, and then I'm creating an iterator on the dynamic array. And I'm also using some of the standard functions and the library functions like for each, random shuffle, to do some operations on this array. So nothing extraordinary, very simple in terms of code, but really shows the ability to mixing C++ standard library operations that are part of the modern C++ with the ability to interact with a Delphi data type like a dynamic array. The program is not terribly thrilling in terms of the actual output, so we just get the data and then the data get shuffled, get modified. On the Delphi side, we do have a few changes as well. We have full UTF-8 string support now available throughout all compilers, including the mobile ones. So that's a significant change in the past. So there is 1 byte string access. Also there is row byte string as part of the core foundation. And so that's even if that's not something you generally use directly. The other big thing is that we have weak references available for interfaces on all platforms, including the desktop platform that were already available on the mobile side along with Arc. But now weak interface references are unsafe, which means without reference counting, interface references are available throughout all platforms. That's quite relevant. It's not a big feature, but it's a significant feature. The weak references allow you to break cycle of references, and that's actually quite nice. So in this simple demo, I have a form with a couple of buttons. There is an interface, and the interface has a fairly generic function and the ability to receive a reference to another interface of the same type. Now the implementation does something which is quite trivial. When you add an object, it does save the object in the class as an interface reference. Now by default, what happens if you create code like this, you create two objects and you have each object referring to the other. With this code, you are creating a cycle. So at this point, if the do something method actually shows reference count, the reference count is increased artificially when the two variables go out of scope, 1 and 2. The reference count remains at 1, as we can see by running the demo. So reference count initially 1 goes up to 2, remains 1, and we know it because when we close the running program, we have a memory leak. Not surprisingly, because this creates a cycle. Now, if we say that the reference between the two objects is a weak reference, it's a managed reference, this, yes, will cost a little in terms of runtime performance, but it solves a very significant problem, which will not really increase the reference count by this operation. And so the reference count stays to 1, and at the when we go to the end of this procedure, the memory is in fact released. You can see it stays to 1, and then there's no memory leak. The other change is the ability to define an unsafe reference. An unsafe reference is a reference, it's an interface reference for which the entire reference counting is completely disabled. It's kind of like having a pointer, having to manage everything by hand. This means, in other words, that if we create an object assigned to the interface, its reference count is not updated and managed, and the object is not going to be destroyed. So with this unsafe reference, the object stays around and you have a leak. Without the unsafe, we go back to the traditional model of enabling the reference counting for that variable. The reference count is 1, we'll go back to 0, the object is destroyed, and there is no memory leak. So we use these features with some care because they're not trivial, but they are extremely powerful in leveraging and making a better use of interfaces on the desktop platforms. Finally, speaking of low-level features, we have quite a few more RTL features, several enhancements to the T-strings type. It's one of the core classes that's used a lot by all developers that use RAD Studio, and there are new features including an all names that filters the names in name value pairs, some options, the ability to add pair with a fluent interface, and actually quite a few others. We have a new implementation of string replace, which is significantly faster. New features in the HTTP client library like timeouts that actually work. And the other class that I wanted to mention and actually demo shortly is T-buffered file stream. It's a very simple enhancement, totally compatible with T-file stream, that does buffered read and write. Having buffered read and write means that some of this operation will be significantly faster. Now what this demo does is it has a first button that will just create, it writes the file, and then it has two ways of reading the file. One is a fairly traditional T-file stream, open, read everything, and the goal here is to count the new lines. There is absolutely no difference from this version besides the fact that it uses a T-buffered file stream. So let's actually write this application, generate the file, use the read button with the traditional operation. Now this is kind of a worst case scenario, because if you're reading from a file 1 character 2 bytes at a time, it's really a bad way to do it, and yeah, using a buffer will improve performance, but you might not realize immediately how much the performance gets better. So if we use the buffered read, and again, it's not just caching of the file or anything, because if I repeat the read, and if I read this way, it's consistently much faster. And again, I'm reading the same exact file, and I get the same exact result. Now, this is a very specific case where buffering helps, because the original read operation is really 2 bytes at a time. However, it's indicative of the fact that if you have similar code, you can just throw and replace the D file stream with a buffer stream, and you can gain some advantage in terms of performance. Having said this, I'm done with the initial part covering the language and the RTL, and now it's Serena's turn to go ahead and continue covering the higher level libraries, FireMonkey and DCL. Serena?
Thank you, Marco. My name is Serena DuPont, and I'm one of the product managers on the RAD Studio product team. I'm really excited to share with you today some of the great new features that we've added in RAD Studio 10.1 Berlin. Now, with FireMonkey and the FireMonkey application framework, you're able to build applications for 4 different platforms: Android, iOS, Windows, and Mac. Now, mobile platforms continue to be the fastest growing operating system, with around 2 billion active users on Android and iOS. So it really makes a lot of sense to focus on developing applications not only just for desktop but also for mobile. Apps certainly remain the preferred mobile technology out there today, and with RAD Studio and FireMonkey, you're able to build an application once and then target iOS, Android, Windows, and Mac with that same source code without having to rewrite your application for each of the target platforms. You're also able to leverage built-in device sensors, services, etc. that are available for each of the target devices. Now, with both Delphi and C Builder, it's really easy to migrate existing applications to mobile, and also to build companion apps, for example, on mobile for your desktop applications using technologies such as our app tethering, where you're able to build an extension of your existing desktop application for mobile. Now, the FireMonkey platform provides everything from device sensors and services components to user interface controls, etc. And you're able to either use the platform native rendering that allows you to use the underlying operating system to render the controls, which is supported for a range of controls on iOS and Windows, or you can use styled rendering. And for styled, we have user interface styles that allow you to style your controls for each of the target platforms, or you can also style your application with an entirely custom theme, for example, orange or green or blue, etc. Something that's very unique to your application that doesn't have the standard native OS look and feel, for example. And with RAD Studio 10.1 Berlin, you can target both Windows, OS X, Android, and iOS. Now, the FireUI multi-device designer allows you to build an application with a shared master and then having specific views for each of the devices. So you can drag and drop controls onto the master, lay out your controls, write your application code, and then you can customize your UI for each of the target platforms. So for example, if you have an iPhone app and an iPad application, you can have more UI controls. On the iPad application, you can have specific UI paradigms, for example, such as a split view control that is aligned on the left on iPad but presents itself as a slide and drawer on iPhone. You can adjust the colors for each of the target devices. You can also write some device-specific code as well, while still being able to leverage all the code that you wrote on the master view, and also being able to leverage the user interface that you've designed. Now, as part of that, we also have the multi-device preview functionality, and that allows you to preview your application across a range of devices, including iOS and Android devices, such as phones and tablets, but also Android Wear devices. So you can preview your application on a range of Android smartwatches as well. Now, another new feature that we have in RAD Studio 10.1 Berlin is a FireUI app preview on device, and we'll discuss that with a demo in just a couple of minutes. Now, FireMonkey also provides platform native rendering on iOS and Windows for a range of controls such as tmemo and tedit. And you can choose from the FireMonkey GPU-driven control rendering that allows you to use custom styles, for example, or platform-native control rendering, which means that the actual rendering of the control is handled by the underlying operating system. And that is supported for a range of controls such as tedit, tmemo, etc. today on iOS and Windows. Now, in 10.1 Berlin, we've made enhancements to all FireMonkey supported platforms, including iOS, Windows, Android, and Mac. And this includes the addition of a new address book component for iOS and Android, FireMonkey Style Designer improvements, the addition of a list view item designer, new font styling, and more. And we'll get to some specific details on those features in just a couple of minutes. In addition, of course, we also have the FireUI app preview on device and the ability to style your applications with a new Android Wear style and Android Wear specific views. Now, the new address book component is a non-visual control that you can drag and drop onto your form to build iOS and Android applications that are able to access the on-device address book data. You're able to access contacts, you can access groups, you can create your own contacts, you can remove contacts, etc. And with that, I'm going to show you a quick demo of the new T-Address Book component in RAD Studio 10.1 Berlin. The new FireMonkey T-Address Book component allows you to get read and write access to the address book on both your Android and iOS devices. Now, using this new component, you can create, update, and delete contacts. You can send a request to access your device's address book and get access status. You can fetch all or individual contacts. You can fetch all contacts from a specified group or specified groups. You can edit or remove existing contacts and groups, and you can also create new contacts and groups. Now, the contact fields are fetched on demand so that not all the data is loaded immediately, and this makes the loading of contacts a lot faster. Now, as you can see here, we have a sample application called the Birthday Reminder Demo, and this application is included with RAD Studio 10.1 Berlin for both Delphi and C Builder. And this demo provides a view of your contacts in order of upcoming birthdays. Now, there are two key steps to make the address book component work. First, we have to request permission. This will return via the onPermissions request event if you can or cannot access the address book. And you can see here we've set up an onPermission request event. And on iOS, this prompts a user dialog requesting that the user provide permission access to load the contacts. And on Android, it checks if you've set up the permissions on the application. So for Android, if we go to Project Options here, we can go to Users Permission, and there are three permissions that we've had to set. We had to set Get Accounts, and then we also had to set Read Contacts right here, and then we also had to set a permission for Write Contacts. And this will in turn allow you to retrieve all the contacts that are on your device and also read and write and create new contacts. Now in the sample, request permission is called via the form show event. So if we have a look here at our form, we set up an onFormShow event that requests access to the permissions. Now with the permissions enabled, this in turn then calls a second event, which is the onExternalChange event. And this is another event that you can set up for the T-Address book. Here you can load or reload the contacts and then display them as you wish. Now this particular sample uses a thread to load the contacts. You could of course also use a T-task. Now the thread does a sort of the contacts based on their birthday to display them then in month, day, chronological order. So you can see your friends' birthdays and they're returned in the birthday reminder sample application and they're listed by upcoming birthdays in sorted order. Now I'm going to deploy this application to the simulator, and the simulator provides some sample contacts, and in this case it will return those sample contacts to me. Now here you can see the permission request. Birthday Reminder Demo would like to access your contacts, okay. And as you can see here, it's returned 4 entries. Those 4 contacts in my address book all contain birthday information. So this demo application specifically looks for contacts that contain birthday information and returns those contacts in sorted order by upcoming birthdays. One of the things you can do, of course, as well is you can use search here to search for a user by name. And if we have a look here, you can see that the birthdays for each of my contacts that have been returned with birthday information are displayed in chronological order by upcoming birthday. We can also go and have a look at the contacts application. And here you can see that for some of the contacts, birthday information has been provided, and for some of them, birthday information has not been provided. So for example, Hank here does not have any birthday information as part of his contacts record in the address book. That's why that particular user was not returned as part of the reminder demo application, birthday reminder demo application. Now we can edit the record, and we can scroll down here and add a birthday. Hit done, and then if we return back to our birthday reminder demo and pull to refresh, you will see that Hank has been returned as part of the results. This was a quick demo of the new T-Address Book component for iOS and Android in RAD Studio 10.1 Berlin. We've also made enhancements to the integrated style designer that you're able to access right from within the IDE. Now those enhancements include clipboard support and keyboard support, in addition to multi-selection support on the structure view, so that allows you to select multiple items, for example effects, and then drag and drop them onto other controls as well. You're also able to preview what your effect is going to look like, or any type of other UI change that you've made to that particular control on the right in the preview panel. So as you can see on the screenshot here, as you're hovering with your cursor over that particular control, such as a button, you're able to preview the glow effect that we've set up in this case. And that is very helpful when you're customizing or creating your own style. Now, the List View Item Designer makes it easy to create your own custom list view items, and they're fully supported with live binding, so you can easily connect them to a data source, for example, and you can create your own custom list view layouts this way very easily without having to write any code. You can add additional text items, you can add glyphs, you can add text buttons, images, etc. And now with that being said, I'm going to show you a quick demo of the new List View Item Designer support in 10.1 Berlin. The T-List View control provides a fast, scrollable list for your multi-device applications and comes with a number of predefined layouts that you can choose from. New in RAD Studio 10.1 Berlin is the ability to rapidly build a custom layout for a T-List View item using a visual designer. Now, to get started, we're going to drop a List View control onto our form and a prototype bind source component. The prototype bind source component allows us to quickly work with some sample data that we can populate our list with. Now I'm going to align my list here to the client, and I started out with a basic header footer template. I'm going to bring up the Live Bindings Designer, and I'm able to visually bind my list control into some sample data. So I'm going to select the item text property, and I'm going to bind it into bitmap name. So here you see a scrollable list with some sample data at design time. Now, if we have a closer look at our item appearance modes for the item, we can choose from a variety of built-in modes, such as image list item bottom detail, right button, etc. Now, new in RAD Studio 10.1 Berlin is this new dynamic appearance mode. The dynamic appearance mode works in conjunction with the new List View Items Designer. So the first thing we need to do for the item property, select dynamic appearance. And then what we can do is we can go back into item appearance, select item, and you will see the option here to add new appearance modes. So this first new object is text 1. So I'm going to bind text 1 into bitmap name, and you can see this is aligned to the center here. And next thing I'm going to do is add another object. I'm going to add an image object, and I could rename this, for example, to my image. And then I'm going to add another object. I'm going to add another text object and rename this to small text, for example. Text 3, small text. And this just makes it a lot easier as you're navigating through the Live Bindings Designer to identify the elements you're looking to bind to. So in this particular case here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to bind into the text 1 into bitmap 1, bitmap name 1, my image into bitmap 1, and a small text label property into color name. Now what I can do is I can right click on my list view here and toggle the design mode. This brings up the List View Item Designer. I'm just going to close the Live Bindings Designer here, and I can now go in and actually adjust the position, the fonts, etc., other settings for my controls. So in this particular case, I'm going to position the image on the left. I'm going to adjust the width of my small text element here to 120 pixels, and the width of my other text element to like 130. And I'm going to position it here. And again, I can move the text elements around. I'll make it a little bit wider. And I can select the text vertical line. So for example, leading, trailing, center. I can also select the text alignment. So for example, leading. I'm going to move this up just a little bit. And I'm going to adjust the settings on the text element itself. Set it to bold and adjust the font size. And move it up just a little bit. Okay, and now the small text item I'm going to position, grab and position right underneath here. And I'm going to adjust the text align to leading, so it's positioned under my item text. And I'm going to change it to bold and a different text color. For example, steel blue. As I move out of the design mode, you can see that layout pattern that I've just designed for my item is repeated across my entire list. And you can fully customize this as you want. You can go in and add additional image objects. You can add additional text objects. You can add accessory. You can add a text button object, a glyph button object, etc. And it's really easy to just go back into this design mode. So you can toggle the design mode via right-click, and then you can exit the design mode. And this was a quick demo of the new List View Item Designer in RAD Studio 10.1 Berlin. We now also have support for extended font styles. TFont has a new property called StyleX that allows you to handle fonts that have extended types of weight, slant, or stretch. Now there are additional features that we've added in 10.1 Berlin, for example, new dialog services, extended clipboard services support, support for accelerator keys on Windows for controls like T-label, T-button, T-radio button, T-tab item, T-checkbox, etc., and touch animation support for list view. Now, FireUI App Preview on Device allows you to easily preview your application on target devices without having to redeploy that application every time. It lets you view your FireMonkey application on your iOS, Android, Windows, and Mac devices, and then while you're making changes on the Form Designer, you can see those UI changes live on the target devices. And with that, I'm going to pass the mic to Jim McKeith, who's going to give you a great demo of the FireUI App Preview functionality in 10.1 Berlin.
In multi-device application development, it's really important to make sure your user interface looks great on all platforms. Luckily, FireUI makes this really easy. On controls like the tab control, you can set the tab position to platform default, which causes the tabs to automatically change position on each platform according to the design guidelines for that platform. You can also preview it on different platforms right here from the IDE and create variant views for specific devices. This gives you the ability to create a view that takes full advantage of larger displays on tablets or desktops while also looking good on devices like watches, Google Glass, and phones. And then to preview it in multiple places at the same time, you can come over here to the multi-device preview and add any platforms you want to preview it on. And then you'll know what your user interface is going to look like across all platforms. Now, all this is great, but nothing beats actually seeing your user interface on the target device, which you can do now thanks to the FireUI Live Preview feature. Live Preview gives you the ability to preview your user interface on actual physical devices. There's lots of information about it in the doc wiki, but I'll let you know that we do ship with the source so that you recompile it and make changes, adding additional packages for other components, and deploy it to any devices you want to, or you can deploy it via binary as well. Before I show you this, though, I'm going to load a style here on my style book. Let's go for the Windows 10 Modern Blue style. So now we've loaded a style here just for Windows 10. So you'll see a variety of devices here. All of these are connected to my IDE. This is my iPad mini. Notice there's no wires on these devices. They're connected wirelessly over Wi-Fi using the app tethering technology because they're all on the same network. So iPad mini running iOS, Android phone running Android, Dell tablet running Windows 10, my IDE is running on Windows 10 here, and then over here is my MacBook Pro running OS 10. Now, all of them are running the live preview application. So now I can connect any of these to the IDE and get the live preview. So let's go ahead and start with the iPad here. Hit connect. So it's got the preview up on the iPad here. Now you'll notice right away that the screen is not blue, it's white, and that's because the blue theme I have loaded is the Windows 10 Modern Blue theme. So it only shows up on Windows 10, doesn't show up on the iPad. Also, the tabs have moved from the top to the bottom because on Windows, tabs go on the top, on iOS, tabs go on the bottom. If I make a change, like let's add a button on here. You don't see the border on iOS, but the button is there. You'll see it says button 1. If I change tabs, it also changes tab on the iPad. And also the iPad is live, so I can tap on the iPad and edit this. And that's because the user interface is running, but it is not actually running the code behind. So if there was something that happened on the text box change, that wouldn't happen. So now let's connect the Android device here. So we'll just tap on Studio and hit connect. And we'll see it connects. And again, as I make changes, like for example, changing tabs, it changes tabs. And you'll notice on Android, again, the tabs are on the top, whereas iOS, the tabs are on the bottom. So let's go ahead and add Windows 10. We'll just tap on the item we want and hit connect. And we'll see there's the window appeared on Windows 10. Now this time you'll notice it is blue. That's because it's got the Windows 10 theme applied to it. So we see it in with the Windows 10 theme, the blue theme. And now let's go ahead and do the OS 10. And on here, we'll just tap the one we want and hit connect. And it connects and brings it up. And it's not blue. And that's because, like I said, the theme is only for Windows 10, so it'll only show up on Windows 10. You can manage live preview in the IDE here. If you just go to the FireUI live preview page in preferences. In here, this allows you to turn it on and off. Allows you to change your server name, which is the name of your IDE, how it'll show up on the devices. And then you can also set a password if you want to prevent other devices from connecting to your IDE if you work in an environment with other developers. Also, you get a list of all the connected devices, the device name, and the OS that they're running. And from here, you can select one and disconnect it if you want to. So there we go. We're previewing across 4 devices, Windows 10, iOS, Android, and OS 10, with the new live preview feature of FireUI.
Now, Windows 10 has seen the fastest adoption rate for Windows. There are over 270 million Windows 10 devices as of March 30th, 2016. And Windows 10 has also really gained a lot of adoption in the enterprise as well. Now, VCL continues to offer the fastest migration path to Windows 10. You can use your existing project code. You can easily update your UI to look like Windows 10 just with the simple addition of Windows 10 styles. We also have some Windows 10 specific controls, such as the split view control or the relative panel, toggle switch, etc., so that you can add common Windows 10 specific UI elements to your applications. And support for Windows 10 Store via Project Centennial, which will be coming from Microsoft, is going to be an additional way that you'll be able to market your application to your customers. Now, with RAD Studio, we provide unparalleled support for Windows, including Windows 10. We integrate Windows 32-bit, Windows 64-bit, and also WinRT APIs as well. And we have controls such as the new split view control, the relative panel control, the toggle switch, the activity indicator, and the search box. Those controls were introduced originally in RAD Studio 10 Seattle, and they're Windows 10 specific controls you're able to leverage in your applications. In addition to, for example, the T-sharing contract, which brings support for contracts, the system mechanism for sharing information with other Windows 10 applications, and then also the notification center component, which supports Windows 8 and later systems. Now, we've also made improvements in the WinRT bridge, and we have Bluetooth LE support now for Windows 10. RAD Studio Berlin provides the new WinRT Bluetooth API that supports Bluetooth low energy devices and beacons on Windows 10. So you can now run an application on Windows 10 that allows you to scan for Bluetooth LE devices that advertise data, send and receive BLE advertising data. You can also send custom BLE advertising data through manufacturer-specific data, and also there's support for both iBeacon and AltBeacon formats on Windows. We've also added support for additional platform APIs and support DirectX 12. In addition, there have been enhancements in both high DPI support and our multi-monitor support. Now, IoT, or Internet of Things, is the largest growing area in IT today. And I'm sure you've heard a lot about IoT. And for developers, IoT really presents a very interesting opportunity by being able to build distributed systems that connect into smart sensors, services, devices, etc. And this is really something that we're seeing in both the consumer space but also in commercial applications. So, for example, in consumer space, you can write applications that allow you to automatically turn down the lights, adjust the heat in your house, adjust the air conditioning levels in your house, for example, with smart sensors and thermostats. And then, of course, in a commercial application, you might be in a hospital environment where there are Bluetooth LE connected devices that automatically gather data. There are beacons that allow you to track somebody's movement, for example, through a building, etc. So IoT is a very fast-growing market, and in 10.1 Berlin, we've added a lot of great new features to expand our IoT offering. Now, RAD Studio has very strong IoT and connectivity support built in. We have support for app tethering, giving your applications the ability to interact with other applications running either on the same machine or on a remote machine. So, for example, you could have a music player application running on a desktop and a tethered mobile application that acts as an extension to your desktop application, allowing you to control what song is playing on your desktop machine, for example. We also have built-in support for Bluetooth with both components for T-Bluetooth, classic Bluetooth, and also Bluetooth LE devices, support for beacons, alt beacons and iBeacons, and also support now for the new Eddystone Google format for beacons. And Bluetooth LE and beacons are now also supported on Windows 10. And we also have strong Wi-Fi support built in. You can connect via HTTP and REST client libraries to TCP IP-based devices. Now let's have a look at some of the key new IoT features in 10.1 Berlin. Now let's have a look at key new IoT features that we've added in 10.1 Berlin. We've extended our support for Bluetooth LE with the addition of additional standards and features. We've also improved our Android Wear support, so now there's an Android Wear specific style that you can apply for your Android Wear smartwatch applications. We also have added different Android Wear device previews that you can access through the multi-device preview feature so that you can preview your application across multiple different Android smartwatches. And there's also a new Fire UI view that you can access to fully customize the layout of your application for Android Wear devices. Now with 10.1 Berlin, we're also introducing a new IoT architecture with metadata-driven components generation. And what that means is that we have pre-built IoT device components for popular IoT devices that you can access and download through the Get It Package Manager from the Tools menu to be able to quickly connect to a range of both medical and home automation sensors and services. Those are both Bluetooth LE or Z-Wave based sensors. And we have support for both heart rate monitors, blood pressure monitors, scales, thermostats, smart door locks, etc. And in a couple of minutes, David I is going to show you a great demo of what we've implemented. We also have support for ThingPoints, RAD servers, enterprise mobility services distributed extensions that allow you to easily build an edge service using our ThingPoint implementation so that you're able to collect data at the edge from all the different devices that are connected into your IoT systems. Now, what's new specifically for Bluetooth in 10.1 Berlin? We've extended our Bluetooth LE support for Windows 10, and that also includes support for beacons on Windows 10 and also Beacon Fence on Windows 10. Now, with the beacon support, we've added support for Eddystone beacons. It's a new format from Google, and that is supported for both iOS and Android. We've also made enhancements to Beacon Fence. Now, of course, Beacon Fence is our developer proximity solution that delivers precise GPS-free indoor and outdoor user location tracking and events with both radial and geometric zones for any physical location or layout. We have Beacon Fence components and a Beacon Fence map editor, and you're able to, for example, load in a map of your office building and then strategically position beacons throughout that office building to be able to set up location awareness and add location awareness to your applications. Now, we've added new features to Beacon Fence in RAD Studio Berlin. Now, those include the ability to detect zones, beacon support for Windows, also support for Eddystone beacons, and improved calculation performance. Now, our ThingConnect IoT connectivity framework turns off-the-shelf and custom IoT smart devices, sensors, and wearables into easy-to-use API components. And we have over 50 IoT device components that you can access through the Get It Package Manager for both Z-Wave and BLE devices. And those components all come with pre-built demos so that you're able to get started quickly on both Delphi and C++ using these IoT device components. Now, our ThingPoint Edge service provides the software stack for building and deploying edge modules. This allows you to collect data from nearby devices into the enterprise backbone, and you're able to pre- and post-process collected data. And then you're also able to filter data based on several criteria and cache edge data in a SQL database. With the ThingPoint Edge services, you're also able to communicate with EMS servers bidirectionally through REST APIs. So what does that mean? So for example, let's say you have a factory and you have multiple temperature sensors set up throughout your facility, and you want to receive a push notification whenever the temperature is above a certain degree, for example. You could have all your Bluetooth LE smart devices connected to ThingPoints throughout your facility, and the ThingPoints would be caching that data and would be able to filter data based on several criteria. So for example, if the temperature is above a certain degree, we need to make sure that we send a push notification to the facility manager to let them know to check the refrigeration system, for example. With the ThingPoint Edge service support, you're able to build and deploy edge modules that are connected to your nearby devices and then be able to analyze that data and communicate with EMS servers through REST APIs. If we have a quick look here at the IoT Edge data flow, you'll see that the client applications, so for example, in a medical environment, it could be the nurse making a request to EMS, to RAD server, for specific blood pressure information for patient A. It makes that request to a ThingPoint. The ThingPoint Edge service is running on a Windows or Mac machine. That ThingPoint Edge service application then makes a request to the smart device, for example, the blood pressure monitor, to return the current value. That current value is returned to the ThingPoint, and then the nurse is able to receive that value by making a REST request through the RAD server via EMS. And with that, I'm going to pass the mic to David, and he's going to show you our ThingConnect support in 10.1 Berlin.
I'd like to show you the new Internet of Things, or IoT support, that we've added with components for specific IoT devices in RAD Studio 10.1 Berlin. To find these new components, you go to the Tools, Get It Package Manager, choose the Internet of Things. Right now there's 52 Internet of Things device support that's available on the Get It server. A mixture of blood pressure devices, weight scales, lights, speed indicators. You can hover over them and it'll tell you more about each of these device interfaces. I'm looking for the Polar H7 heart rate monitor that I'm wearing. I have a chest strap with the Polar H7, and all of these devices are part of our ThingConnect technology. We'll install this Polar heart rate monitor ThingConnect IoT device, and that'll bring in the component pack specific for the Polar H7 smart heart rate monitor. So we click install. We agree to the license. It downloads the component package and installs it into our IDE. So now it's compiling the component, the runtime library parts, and also a sample program that you can use to learn about programming the Polar H7 heart rate monitor. And then once it's installed, it then changes to uninstall, so that if later you don't need the component anymore, you can come back into the Get It Package Manager and uninstall it. And now it's loaded up the sample program. We have down here a couple of components. One is the Polar heart rate monitor specifically, and the Bluetooth Discovery Manager. So the heart rate monitor component is type T Polar heart rate monitor. It has a device name and then other properties that we can use as part of working with this heart rate monitor. Also down in the component palette, you'll now see a new category called the Internet of Things, and in there those two components, the Bluetooth Device Discovery Manager, as well as the polar heart rate monitor. And if you hover over it, it tells you which platforms each of these works with. This sample application is there just to get you started. It's got a button here that says click to discover BLE or Bluetooth LE devices. So if it's already connected, we'll disconnect from it. Otherwise, we'll go and call the Bluetooth Device Discovery Manager Discover Devices method. And then if it finds the polar heart rate monitor, then we'll add it to the list of devices by getting its device name. And then once we have a list of discovered devices, then we can go and turn on the Discover button enabled. So on Device Connect, update and enable a combo box that we can use. On Device Discovered, here we'll add to the list of devices we might have found. So I'm going to set my target to be my iOS device. So we'll compile and run this sample over on my iOS device, my iPhone 6. We can click the Discover Bluetooth devices, looking for a heart rate monitor. And there's my Polar H7, so we can select that. And then it's connected now, so we'll click in the combo box and we see 3 different services: the heart rate, the device information, and the battery service. Then we'll click on the property that we want, for example, getting the serial number, and we'll click the read. And it gives us the serial number of the device. We go back, for example, and choose the battery service. And the property we want just is the battery level. So let's read the battery level. And it gives us the value. The battery is at 74%. And then finally, we can go and say, get what we really want is the heart rate. And on the heart rate, we can find out what the body sensor location is. So we'll read that. And I'm using the chest strap. If the device has a notification or indication service, we can subscribe to that service. So, for example, here's the heart rate service. Let's go and get the heart rate measurement property, and we can subscribe to the heart rate. And now it'll tell me what the heart rate is. We can run the same application on Android, in my case, the Samsung Galaxy S4. Okay, here comes the splash screen, and here comes the app. So let's click to discover our Bluetooth LE devices. So it's calling the Discover Devices method. We'll click on the device to connect to it. So we can go and look at the different services that are available. Again, heart rate, device information, battery service. Let's choose the heart rate. What is the body sensor location? Let's read that value. Again, I'm using the chest strap. Go down here to the services. In this particular case, the heart rate. I want to do the heart rate measurement. And it's a notification property, so I can subscribe to it. And it will start displaying the heart rate. If I start moving around, you'll see that my heart rate goes up as I was standing up and sitting down for a moment. While we're subscribing to the heart rate measurement, if we go back to the heart rate monitor, it has an event on heart rate measurement update. So if we see that event handler, it gets the value from the update handler for the heart rate measurement. So that's how easy it is to start programming for the Internet of Things using the tools. Get a package manager in RAD Studio 10.1 Berlin for all these different categories of devices: smart switches, temperature gauges, door locks, speed sensors, dimmers, gas leak sensor, weight scales, and so on.
Thanks, David. So we've seen that there are new extensions and features around EMS related with the IoT development model. There are also extensions to beacon fencing, which is another technology that we use to license separately. Now, what's coming along, and it's not a product announcement because the product is not available today, but we want offer to a sneak peek to it, is a new offer that's called RAD Server, which is a combination of product that provide a backend to mobile and desktop applications. The main points of a backend is offering REST endpoint publishing, the ability to publish APIs as REST JSON-based web services. And this API brings to provide a middleware model for connecting with services, with database servers, with company information, with any other external or internal company architecture. RAD server also comes with ready-to-use application services, built-in capabilities like user management, directory services integration, user allocation tracking, push notifications, and built-in storage. So all of these features make up a RAD server instance, and the technology is the same that we ship as part of EMS. So again, we have REST, endpoint publishing, we have access control to those features, we have extensive API analytics, and the ability to easily build mobile and desktop applications, but even web applications that provide the front end to the service. The idea of integrating middleware, meaning you can talk to database servers, relational database servers in a more traditional multi-tier model, but you can also leverage other independent cloud services from Amazon, Google, Microsoft, and others. And you can also have integration with IoT devices, sensors, and objects through the ThingPoint model. Finally, as I was mentioning, there are core application services that include push notification, the ability to send information to a mobile device, even if the application is not running there, users and group management, the proximity model, the location model enhanced with the beacon fencing technology that we have been shipping since last year, and an internal data storage. So similar services, similar backend services made by other companies end up being relatively expensive. We want to go in a significantly different directions in terms of pricing and availability. So the plan, and again, this is just a plan, it's not a final announcement. This product cannot be bought today, but the plan is that we are considering is to selling the server with a per device license, roughly $99 per device, or less than $99 per device, but also offer an unlimited server, full featured, with unlimited users, unlimited devices, unlimited API calls, either self-hosted or cloud-hosted, and the license for that is expected to be less than $5,000. So that's kind of the planning in terms of pricing. Nothing is official as of today. This is just a sneak peek to this RAD server technology that we plan to introduce in this quarter. The development bits, the development features for beacon fencing, for EMS, and for the other elements of the technology are part of RAD Studio Berlin. So you can start developing these applications or delving into the technology while we finalize the plan and launch the new product. Now, beside these main features that we've covered from the installer, IoT, FireMonkey, and all the other enhancements, there are additional features that are around developer productivity and around the quality enhancement that have been done to the product. The productivity enhancements we've done in 10 Seattle were very significant, including the doubling the memory model, the enhancement to the object inspector, and much more. But we do have quite a few interesting also in this release. The new installer is a significant productivity enhancements, and the enhanced package manager beside the feature manager that's part of the installation process. Also, we have this new Fire UI app review on device, which is pretty unique in the industry and very funny and nice to use. There is a new minimalistic welcome page. There is a separate form designer for VCL and FireMonkey. This is something that has been asked for a long time. Many developers, specifically those that use multi-monitor systems, so they can have the form designer on one screen and the source code for that form on a separate screen. improvements in high DPI support, improvements in live binding in terms of performance and capabilities. So there's really a lot available. Again, the main feature, the most visible, is likely the new floating form designer, but is available both for the VCL and for FireMonkey. So in this case, you can see two floating forms and the editor in the back. There are many other productivity enhancements in 10.1 Berlin. There is a new structure view for C++ with the parser, which is actually based on the LLVM compiler engine. So it works properly in terms of C++ 11 language specification. Also, the IDE shows the header dependencies for the CLang compilers. There is a new bookmark stack management. There is selection expansion, the keyword shortcut key that basically selects the current element with a syntactic point of view. I'm going to show you a demo in a second. There is file associations now moved to the options dialog, so you can actually enable and disable associating Pascal C++ files to a given version of the IDE from the IDE itself rather than during the installation process. And finally, there is for Delphi a methods toxicity metric, so it's the ability to get some metrics about the complexity of the code, the number of nested if statements, the complexity in terms of parameter, length, cycles that are part of the code, and the methods that don't fit the standard rules are flagged as potentially dangerous, or method that you should rather try to improve and rewrite and refactor in a different ways. But the thing that I wanted to show you actually in practice is the selection, the syntax expansion for the selection through the Control W. So suppose you have this code. I'm going back to demo I compiled earlier. If I press Control W, it will select the closest logical element, which is this variable. If I go up one level, we'll select all the parameters of the call. If I go up one level, it selects the Boolean expression within the while statement. If you go up one level, select the entire while statement. If you go up one level, select everything within the try finally block, or the try finally block in its completeness, or the code inside the procedure, or actually the entire procedure. So it's really driven by the syntax. You can expand the selection, making it wider and wider until it goes to the point you're interested in, rather than fiddling around with source code lines or limited selection within a code section, a logical code section. 10.1 Berlin shows a significant focus on quality. Roughly a quarter of the planned work was around quality and improvements rather than brand new features. We have fixed a high number of issues or small enhancement requirements and minor feature requests collectively reported as bugs. More than we've done in the last few years for a single release. We've got like 50% more than the average, close to 750 customer reported bugs and over 2,500 bugs from the internal system, including the customer reported ones. We have many enhancements for debugging, from CPU view support to Unicode string evaluation, and many other features that have been added to debugging on the various mobile platforms, including iOS 64-bit. Around FireDuck, there is a huge amount of work that was done for updating the drivers, the ODBC driver, SQLite, Interbase Fireboard, with new features, improvements to the Oracle driver supporting the latest APIs, and also a new Oracle admin service component that can be dropped in a data module to use these administrative operations. Again, we've enhanced the Advantage database driver, the DB2 driver, Postgres, Informix, and cleaned up a little bit of the MongoDB database. Now, speaking of our databases, of course, we do support all of them out of the box with the same quality, with the same focus, with the same interest, but we do have one that you get as developer edition within the product. This database has actually won an Internet of Things embedded database award, because the point is you can really create very small instances, has a very small footprint, high performance, and encryption built into the Interbase 2Go version, which really lets you be secure, be safe, and have the data local to where it is produced. Interbase has an astonishing feature, which is change views. So whenever you do a traditional briefcase model, you're fetching the data and getting it remotely. Every time there is a change, you basically have to refresh the entire data structure if something is introduced or added. So you end up with a lot of traffic between the client and the server to keep the client cache up to date and complete. With the change views, only the differences are sent over to the client, because the server will keep track of the client that's sending the request. The server knows which information was already provided to the client and can only receive the packets that include updates or insertions or deletion of the original data. This makes the traffic extremely smaller, which is very relevant for mobile. So it's absolutely a great technology that you should check if you haven't done it so far. Now back to EMS or RAD server. There are several extensions, including the support for server metadata. It's based on one of the de facto standards for documenting REST APIs called Swagger. We do provide two different representations of this metadata. And the nice thing that there are existing tools, open tools. There is a Swagger web-based tool. There are testing applications that can just consume this information and produce tests, produce client interfaces, and many other things. So this is extremely important to be able to use and leverage RAD server in many different scenarios, and also for creating testing, automatic tests for your RAD server endpoints. The other huge feature is this ThingPoint of federated services that act as a conduit to and from RAD server. Basically, you have RAD server running. The ThingPoint will just start executing, will register itself with RAD server, and will not just make the information available to RAD server, but through RAD server will make the same information available through any client. So a RAD server will publish further endpoints for these resources that are provided by remote applications, and will make those endpoints available to any client in the system. So this is a very interesting technology that, again, I recommend you looking into. The RAD server requires a lengthy explanation, and these technologies like Swagger support are very nice, but would take probably a little too much time to delve into. So we'll certainly do other in-depth webinars that focus on these extensions. We've done some cleanup also in other product areas like web broker. The now defaults to UTF-8 as the string type, which is the most commonly used string type on the internet. DataSnap has a few extensions as well, with some further use of the REST and HTTP client libraries, rather than the HTTP client library for both REST and HTTP connections, while it was only REST in 10 Seattle. Improvements of server method support, and the other relevant thing is that both Azure and Amazon Web Services support has been updated to the latest APIs. We were a little behind, and we've catched up. So now we are at the same level that's currently supported on the two platforms. And with this, I'll let Brandon finish the webinar.
Thanks, Marco. And as you can see here in this slide, 10.1 Berlin was a pretty expansive release with a lot of functionality, including a brand new installer, Internet of Things technology, and many other features and functions. A couple changes with this release in regards to the additions that we offer. With 10.1 Berlin, we discontinued our Ultimate Edition, and customers who currently have Ultimates will essentially get Architect. But as you see through here, nothing else for the most part has changed in regards to what editions we currently offer. With 10.1 Berlin, Update subscription is now included by default. There are many benefits to having Update subscription, including access to the latest releases, bug fixes, as well as the ability to access support. Having Update subscription allows us to provide the best user experience and success in using our product. With this launch, we have a few special offers that are out there available to our prospective customers and our customers, including an introductory 10% off pricing through May 19th. This includes RAD Studio, C++ Builder, and Delphi. This also applies to new licenses and any updates, and is also applicable for FireDAC add-on and the mobile add-on as well. Thank you for joining today's webinar. If you have any questions, please feel free to email us at the addresses below. Thank you.
Okay, David I here, and with me in the studio in Scotts Valley is Serena DuPont.
Hello.
And then online is a whole bunch of people. Marco Cantu.
Hi.
Marco, there you go. Jim McKeith is online with us, and Brandon Shop as well.
There.
Lots of questions. We won't, we've answered a lot of them. I think some of them we've just given you pointers to the DocWiki. So you can go to the DocWiki for Berlin on the What's New page. I've put that in multiple areas of questions. There were some questions about IoT devices or which devices are supported, and there's a ThingConnect devices page which lists all the current, I think it's 52.
Correct. There is a ThingConnect DocWiki page, and there's it's not a separate IoT DocWiki, but it's a portion of our Berlin DocWiki that specifically covers IoT-related topics. And under that, you can find a list of both Bluetooth LE and also Z-Wave-based devices. And again, you can install them through the Get It Package Manager. There's a new Internet of Things category, as David I showed in the video earlier. And then you can select whatever component you'd like to install. And with that, you will also get both C++ and Object Pascal demos. I know one of the questions that came up earlier, I think David already answered it in the chat, was regarding where do the demos get installed to. So when you install a new IoT Get It component, the demo will automatically pop up for you to use, so you can get started quickly. And then you can also find those demos in the same samples directory as the main product demos get installed to. So for example, you can go to C users, public documents, I think it's samples, 18.0, and then there's a root directory called Internet of Things at the same level where you will find the Object Pascal and C++ demos. And under that Internet of Things category, you'll find subfolders for all the IoT devices that you've installed through Get It, and then you'll find separate C++ and also Object Pascal demos.
Those are the list of devices that we currently support, and there's more to come. There's been questions about what about connecting to other devices. Some of the device component wrappers we have are for generic devices, like even though I use the Polar H7 specific component install, there's a heart rate monitor generic component. So if your heart rate monitor device is GET standard, Bluetooth LE defines what the Bluetooth LE Bluetooth smart devices are, and if they're GET standard, then using the generic one should work with any GET standard heart rate devices.
Correct. So there are a couple of generic device components that you can install, and as long as your device uses the standard GATT profiles, as David I mentioned, then they should work just fine. Now, in a lot of cases, manufacturers will create their own custom devices and may not use the standard GATT profiles, etc. So in those cases, we have very specific device components to help you get started quickly building applications for those particular devices. And we have, most of the devices fall in either the medical space category, so for example, blood pressure monitors, heart rate monitors, scales, etc., or home automation. There's a couple of them that don't fall specifically in either of those two categories, but we have a really nice range of different devices that are either Bluetooth LE or Z-Wave.
And Marco, maybe this one for you. There's been the discussion during that install section about the two different installers. There's the ISO, the disk image based installer, or what we call the offline installer. That has its own setup program. Then there's the feature installer, which uses underneath the get it style operations where you can install parts. That's called the feature installer or the online installer. Marco, there's a couple people who are wondering, if I install from the ISO, can I still do the feature management stuff, or if I install using the feature installer, can I go back and use the ISO installer, and then how do I uninstall everything?
So the two processes are completely separate. There is no overlap. If you use the ISO installer, which is based on the installer, like the previous 10 versions of RAD Studio, if you want to change anything in your installation, you have to rerun the installation, use modify repair, change the selections. It's a little more awkward. That's why we built a new system, but that's what's available. On the other hand, the new installer is more flexible. You can just pick a few features and then later on from the IDE activate the selections. But you can do it only if you started with the online feature installer. So the two experiences don't have an overlap today. Now in the future, we plan merging everything using the new installer and then providing a way rather than downloading files, reading them from a local ISO image. But again, that's something we would be considered in the future, but for now, the two experiences are separate. In both cases, you can uninstall. If you're using the ISO, you just go and uninstall everything. If you're using the feature installer, you have two options. You can more easily uninstall an individual feature. Say, I don't care about iOS, let's remove the iOS compiler. It's using space on my hard drive. You can do that, just remove the platform and apply. You can also go to the Windows, to the core operating system level and say, software, install software, and do uninstall and remove everything, including the core IDE, which is what drives the feature installer.
This is for Brandon and Mark or Serena. There were a few people asking, what about Linux? Linux is on our roadmap. Any conversations? Marco, I know you were in Berlin, Germany on Tuesday. Maybe it came up there as well.
Sure, it came up there, and the answer is yes. Linux is on the roadmap. It's a very high-profile feature that we want to add, and it helps also answering the questions around the plans and for RAD server for this new packaging of product that we just announced. But the Linux compiler will also be usable, of course, to write standalone individual web broker, data snap, or using third-party libraries, any type of server-side application. You can also have local applications that are not server-side that, for example, integrate with devices, sensor, and other features. What we don't expect to provide is a client-side Linux, so no FireMonkey, no user interface. Now, in terms of timing, we have this feature in the roadmap for this year, but that's all that I can share.
Well, one of the questions that I saw was about the list view items designer. So with the list view items designer, you can add your own custom accessories as well. So or you can select from different accessories that you can add. You can, of course, also add your own custom images. So if you wanted to add an accessory icon, what I would recommend, if you wanted to select from any type of PNG, for example, that you have, just select a new T image. So as part of the list view items designer, it's really easy to customize the layouts of your items, and then that layout, once you've defined it for one list view item, is repeated throughout your list so that you have a cohesive look across your entire list. So for example, if you wanted to have a glyph icon on the top right, a glyph icon on the bottom right, and then an image on the left side, you could just add 3 different T-image controls and you can visually bind them into your data source, for example, or you could add an image to that. I think that would be the fastest approach. In regards to styling, T-List View, of course, supports styles. So we have platform native rendering for iOS, Android, Windows, and Mac with the platform styles, and then, of course, you can also load custom styles such as the Windows 10 style, for example. Another question that I saw was about parse. So one of the questions I saw was about parse and the parse components. So as you may have heard, the parse backend as a service is getting, I think, retired this next year. I think, David, was the date for it?
It's still available till January of 2017. Okay. They give you the source code so that you can create your own parse server if you want. So the functionality can still work as it is defined today.
Correct. So as it is defined today, it will continue to work until January of next year. One of the questions that came up was about if we were planning on updating the components so that you could use them with your own servers that you might set up. So that's something we're looking at. We'll investigate that some more, and if you have specific questions or requests, certainly feel free to reach out to me, and then it's something we'll take under consideration.
Okay, and I saw a couple of interesting things as well. I saw a few questions as usual, if I can say so, around supporting Android, supporting BlueStacks emulator on Windows, and actually we had some experiences and some tests using Android devices or Android emulators that embed libhoudini, which is today the majority of the Android Intel devices have this library by Intel. And we've seen good, in most cases, that FireMonkey application would run properly. Also on Intel devices, I've used BlueStacks on my system. We've done other tests. We will try to be more consistent in testing and providing the same full experience on the libhoudini platform for Intel Android, but it's mostly working also today.
I think those are some of the big questions. There's a whole bunch of other questions as it relates, specific kinds of things people had. So I've usually generally said to people, if you see a problem or a bug, please post it in quality.embarcadero.com.
Correct.
You can also do feature requests in quality.embarcadero.com, and you can vote for other people's feature requests as well. Product management looks at the quality portal to look and see what is going on with not only bug reports, and R&D looks at things, but also feature requests.
Okay. Now I wanted to mention a couple of other things that talking of bugs and issues. There are a couple of issues we are monitoring and looking into. Specifically, there is one data snap issue that we are aware of, and we were hoping to have the hotfix today, but it's a matter of days. So there is one specific data snap server problem that we're going to have that fixed very, very shortly. Also, some of the libraries that are missing will be made available. The BD, for a few people that already asked for it after 2 days, is totally deprecated. You should get rid of it, but in case you really need it, we'll make that available. It was made available, but there was an issue, so we will have to reissue that feature as a separate download. Also, the ribbon control is not part of the core VCL anymore, mostly for legal reasons with Microsoft, not fully our decision, but it will be surfaced on GetIt as an add-on component.
Hey, Jim, here's a question for you, if you're still there, about deploying apps to Android Wear. So I know you have a couple Android Wear. I think you have at least one watch, if not two.
Yeah, I didn't see the question. What was the question?
It was, how do we deploy apps to Android Wear? They have no cable. Is it through Bluetooth debug mechanism or something?
So there's two ways to do it. The Moto 360 has no cable. It uses Bluetooth, and so how you do that is you have to pair it with your phone, and then you set up your watch for Bluetooth deployment. That takes a while, like a minute to deploy, just because it's going to transfer all the data over Bluetooth to your, or you transfer it through the cable to your phone, and then from your phone via Bluetooth to your watch. Then the other way is some of the watches have a back you can click onto it that then provides a cable plug, and once you do that, then you can deploy it via Bluetooth. And with that way, if you load the USB drivers, it shows up just like any other Android device, and that way deploys very fast, just like with any other regular Android phone deployment. So those are the two ways you can do it. There's also a way, and I haven't experimented with it, where you can bundle the Android or the Android Wear app into the phone app, and so then when the phone app gets installed, it pulls it out of the APK, the Android Wear app out of the APK, and sends it down to the watch over Bluetooth. But for debugging purposes, you probably want to get a watch that has the ability to clip on a USB plug, because that's going to be way faster for deployment.
There's been several questions about the third-party component. Sorry, the third-party component vendors are technology partners, and when will they have 10.1 Berlin components available from their site or information on their sites? Our partners have been involved in the 10.1 Berlin effort for, probably briefed 8 months ago or more, and they've had builds since before the end of last year, and they have the final RTM build. They need to build their components with the RTM build. We've given that to them. So check with them, not just go to their website, but you can also contact them, for example, like TMS or DevExpress and so on. The other way to know is you can go to tp.embarcadero.com, and there's a tech partner directory. You can choose the 10.1 Berlin checkboxes for VCL, FireMonkey, for Delphi, C++ Builder, RAD Studio, and FireMonkey. There's 10.1 Berlin. It'll be on those lists on the partner search directory, and you'll see the ones that the partners have already gone through our system and checked that they have support. But mostly contact your third-party partners directly that you use their components, and they will be able to give you an update. We've told them they can talk about Berlin. I sent an email at early morning, Tuesday morning, California time, to all of them that released them from their NDA that they had during the field test and development time.
A couple other things that I wanted to cover, and I know just to add to what Jim said about Android Wear, with 10.1 Berlin we added an Android Wear specific style. If you've used Android Wear watch devices, you're probably familiar that the UI controls tend to be bigger, so we have a custom new style that's included in the styles folder that you can load onto your Android Wear view. We also have new views in the FireUI multi-device designer. You can load them using a T-Stylable component. And then we also have multi-device preview device views that you can access through the view menu. You go to view multi-device preview, and you can toggle to select multiple Android Wear devices so that you can preview what your application is going to look like on a range of Android Wear devices. Now for the FireUI app preview, which Jim showed earlier, that allows you to broadcast changes that you're making in the form designer to your connected devices that uses app tethering as the underlying technology, we have the sources available that you can use and build and deploy to your own devices, and the location for those project files can be found by going to the DocWiki. DocWiki What's New page has at docwiki.embarcadero.com has a link to the sources where you can access them with your installation. We also have a pre-built Android APK that you can download through the Google Play Store, and we're in the process of also making the iOS version available through the Apple Store as well. So we're going through the final stages with that. I saw a question about that earlier, so if you haven't been able to find the iOS version, it's because it's not live yet, but the Android version is on the Google Play Store. I mentioned it in a blog post that I did on community.embarcadero.com yesterday, and it should be getting added to the DocWiki with a direct link here shortly as well.
Somebody was saying it'd be nice for Embarcadero to venture in the MBAS space, since one of the main things, mobile, EMS. We have an EMS provider for our EMS server, which does user management, device management, push notification, storage, lets you define endpoints, custom endpoints. That's the the EMS part of the RAD server technology. But we also connect to other backend as a service. Serena has tons of blog posts and tutorials for Convey, for Parse.
Correct, and also App42 as well.
By Shepherds, SHEPHERTZ. App42 is there, but there is an EMS provider as well. Marco, go ahead.
To me, the core difference that if for an enterprise space, for a business application, considering hosting on your own system, like RAD server will provide through EMS, is certainly something notable, and the fact that you can build both sides with a single technology is a significant advantage. However, if you are thinking about huge level of scaling, like, I don't know, you're building the next great game, you're hoping to get like 10 million users at the same time on your system, you should look elsewhere. You should look like either using natively cloud providers like Amazon or Azure, or through some of these backend as a service layers that can really scale to some impressive level that any other like custom technology probably won't handle. So the two scenarios are significantly different. So depending on what's your focus, you can pick one or the other. Now, RAD Studio allows you to build clients for all of these scenarios. I mean, direct cloud, MBAS, or custom multi-tier or custom mobile services with RAD server. But which one you choose really depends on your goals, on your application, or your size and breadth in terms of expected customers.
I think there's a few that we'll answer offline. I'll send people emails back. There's a little research to be done. You can always email all of us. Let me put back up the...
Yeah, a couple of things I wanted to add as well is one, there was only one question at this webinar, but there was some confusion online yesterday and the day before. This, although it's called point one, this is not an update. It's a brand new product, a brand new version of the compiler. There's a new version of the compiler. It can sit side by side. It's really a new product. I mean, there was 10.0, there was Seattle. This is 10.1, which is a new product. And I know that the point one has confused a few people. The second thing I wanted to mention that we showed this preliminary initial RAD server prices. I think someone asked if the prices are per year. No, that's not per year. That's expected, again, because there's not a final plan, expected to be a license price, and the license is perpetual. That will has an additional update subscription element, that the one that you have to renew every year if you want to keep renewing. But it being a complete license, you can even decide to stop renewing, but you're still allowed to keep using the software. So it's not, those prices are not a subscription price that you have to keep renewing every year. The price is actually lower than that.
Christy, Serena, any link video how to use multi-view? You did blog posts on Team Multiview.
Yes, I've done actually a bunch of different blog posts on Team Multiview, and also best practices when building an application using FireUI and Team Multiview. So if you go to community.embarcadero.com, you can click on blogs, and you should be able to search for me by name, or click on my name and then be able to search within my past blog posts to find FireUI related content. If you look in Google too, you can look for FireUI or Team Multiview plus Serena DuPont, and you should be able to come across all the different related blog posts that I've done. I know one question just before we close the webinar that I've seen quite a bit come up is about demos that were shown. So all the different demos that I showed today are part of the product. We have the birthday reminder demo that shows you how to use the address book component. That is part of the product. We also have a bunch of additional new demos that are part of the product that you can find in the repository on SourceForge, and of course also with your installation as well. So if you didn't install the samples for some reason with the initial install, you can, if you're using the new installer, you can bring up the feature manager from the tools menu in the IDE, and you can, under additional options, you can select to install samples. Otherwise, you can of course also pull them down from SourceForge, and if you're using the offline installer, you can install them with that installer as well. And then there are a bunch of other demos that we've added to the product, and over the next couple of weeks I'll do some blog posts on some of the other demos that we've added and created, and how to use the new features as well. The FireUI samples, of course, are the project files are provided for the app preview feature. The list view item designer, there isn't a specific sample because it's really designed for you to be able to create your own list view item layouts. After this webinar, my plan is to take that demo that you saw today and actually put it up as a video that you can access for easy replay as well. And then in addition to that, I'll create a blog post with some specific information. I know that Stephen Balls created a video as well and a blog post, and there'll be a lot more content coming from us on the PM side and the evangelism side, etc. So if you go to community.embarcadero.com, that's really the best way for you to see all the different blogs that the teams are doing right now about the release.
And there was questions from a few, looks like beginners to mobile app development. We have a whole set of mobile app developed tutorials on the Doc Wiki. I'm putting the link in right now, if I can type correctly. We even have an ebook, so I'm going to put the, let's see, it looks right. in the answer there. Just go to the docwiki.embarcadero.com, and then, or you can search mobile tutorials. There's even an ebook where the doc team has taken all the mobile tutorials and put it into one PDF. You could print and bind it and carry it with you. It's, I don't know, it's a couple hundred pages for doing development. So new tree view for use in Android. Tree view, there's tree view, that's for VCL, is virtual tree view is in Get It Package Manager.
Mm-hmm. That's right. For Android, I would really recommend using the T-List View component. It's a very fast scrollable list control. We provide both the native platform styling so that you can have the app look just like an Android, for example, Android Lollipop app. We provide a whole bunch of different styles that you can choose from. We have, I think, like 6 or so different Android styles, light, dark, etc., plus the new Android Wear style. And in addition to that, with the new List View Item Designer, you can customize the look of your list. So it makes it it's a very fast scrolling list, and now with the addition of the Items Designer, makes it even easier for you to create your own custom list layouts. Instead of having to, for example, write a bunch of code to create your own custom list, you can just go in and use the List View Item Designer, and at design time adjust the layout of your list items. And of course, it's fully supported with live bindings as well, and that's something that I showed earlier in the demos.
For HTTP and DataSnap, don't need OpenSSL. For EMS, don't need OpenSSL. For Cloud APIs, don't need OpenSSL. Anything else to say, Marco, about OpenSSL?
No, this is only required if you're using in the components directly. If you're using the new HTTP client library and the REST or Buzz or Cloud libraries that are built on top of it, and even DataSnap client library, now both encompassing both REST and HTTP client DataSnap clients, you will not need to deploy a custom version of OpenSSL, because you can just use the platform HTTPS service provided by each of the operating systems.
Question about the install and Windows path variable. Don't get me started on the Windows path system. We put the things we need in the path, and it's up to you to use a path editing tool if you're on older versions of Windows, or good old Notepad, to go and clean up your environment variable path statement for Windows.
And we also have, with that being said, we also have on the doc wiki, we have some information in regards to installing to, for example, an external drive, or downloading the files to an external drive. So we have some good tips and tricks there that you can access on the doc wiki. If you go to docwiki.embarcadero.com, you click on Berlin, and I think it's under installation notes. There's an entire section on that.
Yeah, you can set things for your local IDEs, tools, options, environment variables. Is in each of the products, and in there then you can see the different local environment settings that the ID sets for itself, like where interface is or where search paths are and so on. You also can set your search directories under the tools, options, directories, settings, and so on. So you have the control there. You may, if you don't want to have the ID have specific and you want to use certain tools from different releases, then that's the Windows path or other mechanisms. There are other mechanisms to set, have a batch file that does some settings before you and have it launch bds.exe, for example. Lots of different ways to deal with the way Microsoft has not done anything with the Windows environment variable, specifically path. It's still limited to whatever it is, 1,080 characters.
I thought it was 1024
yeah.
or something like that.
So talk to Microsoft about that. If you want to hook up other kinds of IoT devices, just send me an email, david@embarcadero.com. I'll work with R&D and Serena and the team. I'm going to be working on some more videos. We've got a Vera box here with a door lock. The Vera box talks via Z-Wave to the door lock. We've got a deadbolt lock by Kwikset, and we've got a smart switch for turning a light on and off. So I'll do videos for a couple of those going through the Vera box.
And we also have an IoT playlist on our YouTube channel as well. I don't know if David I has the link handy, but otherwise, you can look for our blog posts on that. If you go to youtube.com/Embarcadero TechNet, I believe is our channel, you should be able to search for IoT and it should come up. It's a playlist that contains some ThingConnect IoT getting started videos, and we're in the process of adding additional videos to it. So David I is going to be working on some Z-Wave videos and also on a ThingPoint video as well.
Yeah, just go to all the playlists. Let's see, we have different playlists. There's how-to videos, so, and here I'll paste that link in. Look, ThingConnect is where all the IoT ThingConnect device videos are going to go. We also have the how-to playlist we're starting to build up now. There's 13 videos there. Setup, config, getting started, mobile app dev, enterprise development, cloud development, app tethering, parallel programming, and IoT. They'll all appear under the how-to as well. So we've got, I think, over 1,800 videos now, something like that, in the whole range of things. But you can send me emails if you can't find a video or if you want us to do other videos. So somebody's asking about code coverage analysis. AQ Time will do code coverage analysis by SmartBear. So you can check out that or other tools. We do have audits and metrics that you can run that will give you suspicious code smells in your code. You can run those if you want. All right, everyone, we're past time, so I want to thank everyone for joining us. We'll keep putting questions in because we'll save the question log here, and we'll get back to you. Somebody's, Roberts is saying Seattle's been very good indeed, and now Berlin looks even better. Congrats to the Embarcadero team.
Thank you.
We will pass that along to the development team members and the QA team members, the doc team members, and everybody that works on the product. So, and CodeGuard is still there for C++ on Windows, as well for doing memory leak detection and Windows API calls detection parameters and issues. So you can, thank you for reminding me about that. Okay, keep putting things in again, whoever hit record, maybe it was Jim, just send me the Q&A audio video file, and I'll render it all from the 3 sessions to the replay that we're going to clean up, and you'll get a notice about the replay. You can also just look on our YouTube channel. Again, I put the link into Embarcadero TechNet, and it'll show up there. We'll create a playlist for RAD Studio 10.1 Berlin. We have a RAD Studio 10 Seattle playlist, so we'll create one there, and we can multi-link videos across multiple playlists, so it all works great. The question about the installer, can you change the install target? And the answer is yes. On the feature installer, it's the second screen you get. The first screen is accepting the license. There's probably one that's maybe the second or third, depending on if you already have a valid license key with update subscription, then it won't ask you for your new license key. Accepting the license is a checkbox. The next screen after that lets you choose where you want to install 10.1 Berlin. And with the traditional offline installer from the ISO, you get to choose where you want to install it as well.
Correct, and one of the questions that came up earlier was about the offline installer compared to the new installer. So the offline installer and the new installer don't overlap, so what that means is if you're installing the product from the ISO, you won't have access to the feature manager that we mentioned earlier because it's a different installer. Then the new web-based installer that's based on our Get It technology that allows you to install any of the supported platforms as you like. You can install them initially during the main install. You can easily add new platforms later on from the tools menu. You can select to install the samples later on, for example, or to help. It's fully customizable so that you're able to get started quickly. So if you're installing from the ISO, you won't have access to that, and as there are 2 separate installers and installer technologies.
For C++ and the Clang compiler in 10.1 Berlin, Win32, Win64, iOS and Android compilers are all Clang 3.3 now. So C++ 11 full down the line. We're working on future releases with C++ 14 and 17 support, but for now it's 3.3 on, and with our extensions for Win32, Win64, iOS and Android. We're still using the classic compiler is available for Win32, and also for OS 10. So there's always more C++ compiler work to be done. There is a DocWiki entry for the IoT components that we support now, and I put that in the Q&A log. It's on the DocWiki. You can also search for ThingConnect or ThingConnect devices in the DocWiki or on Google, and you'll get the list. There's pictures of each of the devices, just like you would see them in the Get It package library, and then information about them. And Serena, I think you mentioned when you install the component, it also installs samples.
Correct. So when you access the IoT components from the Get a Package Manager, so if you have Berlin installed, you can go to the Tools menu, and this is applicable for the Pro and higher editions. You can go to the Tools menu, bring up the Get a Package Manager. Within the Get a Package Manager, you'll find an Internet of Things category, and there you can access a range of over 50 Bluetooth LE and Z-Wave devices that you can install. And after installing a component, the demo project associated with that component that we've created to help you get started quickly will open up automatically, and you can go ahead and also access the same demo projects later on from the samples directory, and they'll be stored in the same directory that the main product samples go into, and that's, I think, public documents 18.0 samples, and you'll find an Internet of Things folder there.
And Jim, this one's for you. You did the video on the live on device preview, and of course GoToWebinar is doing screen grabs, so it won't do it justice as if you're doing it live in front of people, and the replay will look better as far as resolution and also speed. But there was a question here about, is the live preview really that fast?
Yeah, it is. Most of the time I would make some change to the user interface, and in the time it takes for me to look over to the device, I would see it refreshing in that time. Inconceivable, you could have if your network was really congested, you may have some slowdowns, but if you segment your network differently so that you're on a separate subnet, then that should fix that. So, but yeah, it's fast. It's very fast.
Yeah, and under the covers, it's using the app tethering technology that we have over network, right? Not Bluetooth. It's over the network.
Correct.
For speed. So again, Jim's advice of how you configure your subnet from your ID to the device is going to be really important. And we give you the client the source code of the client, so you can see how the client is built, and you can build it yourself for Windows, iOS, Android if you have 10.1 Berlin. Serena, why don't you talk about what we're doing to get the live preview app into the stores?
So we have the live preview app available right now on the Google Play stores for Android, and we're also in the process of getting that up for iOS. So I created a blog post yesterday in community.embarcadero.com with a link to the Android APK that you can download through the Google Play Store. We're also in the process of updating the DocWiki information on the FireUI app preview to reflect that link to the App Store. And then once we have it up on iOS, we're just going through the final steps. Once we have it up on iOS, we'll be adding that link as well. And one of the things that Jim showed during his great demo was that from the IDE, there is I think it's IDE Tools, Options, Live Preview. There's a screen where you can actually set the name of your IDE so that when you're connecting to it, it's easy for you to find that as you're connecting to it, especially if you had multiple machines set up, for example. And you can also see all the devices that are connected to it using app tethering under the covers, as David I mentioned.
I think, Jim, you had, what, 4? I think you had your Windows tablet connected and an iOS and an Android device and another Windows computer and your Mac, all with live preview?
I had the Windows tablet, the Mac OS 10, iOS phone, and iPad. And I went with the phone. Originally I was going to use the tablet and the iPad, an Android tablet and iPad, but I thought that would show the different form factor, which is really amazing, cool if you think about it, that it's showing this rendered, hey, here's the same UI, here it is on an iPad, here it is on a phone, here it is on a desktop, here it is on a tablet. Yeah, it's really cool that it can do that.
Yeah, and there's
also a note though about the live preview though is we provide the source code, and one of the reasons we provide the source code is if you're using a third-party component library, you'll need to include that in the client when you build it, so you can deploy it so that third-party component's there. So if you, for example, add, I don't know, TMS's third-party components or somebody else's third-party components, and you want to get those in the preview, you make sure you include those packages. So Well, yeah, it's going to be in the App Store, and that's going to be great for some simple stuff. Most applications, you end up using third-party components or your own component packages, and in that case, you're going to want to rebuild it with those packages.
Hey, Marco, can you talk about this, the Project Centennial Microsoft thing that they've been promising for over a year now, I think it is? Because you've been to some of the briefings, and then they talked more at Build this year again, but it's still not out there, right?
No, it's still not out there. The runtime, so the code for end users to be able to run Project Centennial, download, store application based on Win32 technologies, that should be part of this Windows Anniversary Edition that, as the name implies, is expected roughly 1 year after Windows 10, so July this year. From July onwards, and even if people will upgrade fast, it will still take a little time before everyone is on Windows 10 Anniversary. At that point, it will be possible for developers to distribute Win32 application through the Windows Store. The process is basically based on a couple of technologies. First, there will be a way to create Apex files, which is just a zip file with a bunch of information and files. So basically creating self-contained applications. So all like configuration files, database files, any file that your application touches will live in this virtual subtree, which is exactly what happens on Android, iOS, and other platforms. That's something that you don't have to write into the application, but it's a file system virtualization that's part of the Centennial support. So there will be tools provided by Microsoft, provided by installation tools that will create these Apex files for you. We plan considering extending the IDE to make it possible to deploy to Centennial like we deploy to iOS or Android. But that will come after Centennial is done and exists. Now, Microsoft has released the first early build with Centennial support, both for some development, but it's really the last build is still very unstable, so we're investigating and looking into it. Now, one side of the project, and to me it's the most relevant one, is the ability once you have a Centennial-enabled app, which technically means your application built with RAD Studio for Win32 or Win64 is in technically a universal Windows platform application. That's the idea. At that point, the application can be distributed and sold through the store, and that's for some of our customers. We know that is very important. The other side of the equation is the ability to surface and integrate with more WinRT APIs. We already provide a lot of support for WinRT APIs, from notifications to contracts to Bluetooth, but this will enable more APIs. Now, how exactly that side is going to work, this is something Microsoft has partially unveiled, but there are still it's still not 100% clear. So that's something we are investigating internally, and we really are focused on providing the best possible solution for Centennial right out of the IDE.
Okay, Serena, there were a couple of questions about T-Multiview. I think one was related to Z-order when you might have mixed control types, and then the other one was about setting the height and size correctly.
Yeah, so for T-Multiview and 10 Seattle, we actually added a new property called Windows 10, I think, or Windows. I forget the exact name, but it's a specific new property that we added for Windows 10 to be able to add T-Multiview to your Windows applications and have the Windows 10 specific behavior that you would expect on Windows compared to what you would expect on iOS and Android. So if you drag and drop T-Multiview onto your form, you'll see a property there for it in the Object Inspector. We also have a separate T-Multiview Windows 10 demo that's accessible in the samples folder, and that's been there since 10 Seattle that you can access and use. In regards to Z-order, kind of a best practices thing to keep in mind is if you're building an application for iOS, we have the option to set all the controls that are part of or nested within T-Multiview to platform type, or control type equals platform, I should say. And that allows you to have them be rendered along with the T-Multiview, so you don't have any Z-order issues when you're mixing for example, a style control with a platform rendered control. So if you're using T-Multiview in your form or team app view, for example, and you want to have controls displayed within that on iOS, select the control, and then in the object inspector, select control type equals platform for all the nested controls.
There was a question here about Ultimate versus Architect. I think the additions now are Starter for Delphi and C++, Professional for Delphi C++ and RAD Studio, Enterprise for Delphi C++ RAD Studio, and Architect, right?
Correct.
And the Ultimate doesn't exist anymore.
That's correct.
But the pieces that were in Ultimate, if you were on Architect,
yes.
That's what DB Power Studio,
Correct.
I think it is, is in Architect, right? In
Yes.
10.1 Berlin. Okay. I always get, but you can also go to the product page and there's
Yeah, and we have the
additions link.
versions/additions page that highlights all the different pieces that are included and how the versions differ.
Oh yeah, so there was a question again about the Fire UI app preview for iOS in the App Store. Jim just talked about that. I think, Serena, it's always a challenge turning things into Apple to explain to them what certain products do. When it's a game or whatever, sometimes it's easier because they can play it. But here you have to have the IDE. So I think, what else have you done? You put the screenshots in.
We submitted some screenshots that hopefully will help clarify and answer any open questions, and we also submitted a video that actually shows it in action because, and I think this is the case for many different types of apps that have any kind of hardware requirements, IoT, etc., that, as part of the approval process with Apple, of course, there's an actual person testing the app and having a look at the application, and so in this case it has, of course, the requirement of RAD Studio to be able to connect to it, so we created a short video that shows it in action, and then hopefully that will allow us to get the app approved and finalized, and then once that's done, we will put up a link on the doc wiki with a direct link to it, and I'll probably tweet about it as well. On the Android side, we have the listing up in Google Play, so the whole approval process is a little bit different on the Android side, as you might be familiar with if you've submitted apps in the past. So there's a Google Play Store listing. And of course, even though the iOS app is not available in the App Store yet, that shouldn't impact anything you're doing in regards to trying out this feature. As we mentioned earlier, we have the sources available. There's a great doc wiki page that outlines all the steps needed to get everything set up, and you can deploy the project yourself to your iOS applications. The App Store part just allows you to install the app on either iOS or Android devices without having to first deploy it to the devices. So you don't have to go through the provisioning process, for example, on all of your iOS devices should you want to test it on some of them that aren't part of your developer program, for example.
Yeah, there was a comment here, Marco, and you replied to it about, more demonstrations. We're going to be building a whole bunch of how-to videos. We already have some. If you go to the Embarcadero YouTube channel, Embarcadero TechNet, you'll see both an IoT playlist as well as a how-to playlist. And
Yes.
the how-to playlist is going to cover install config, getting started, mobile app dev, enterprise computing, cloud computing, parallel programming library, app tethering, IoT, and probably other categories of videos. There's so many things to show. We'll cover more in blog posts and videos and how-to videos. So things like syntactic, I think you showed syntactic expansion, toxicity.
Toxicity, yeah, that's the one I wanted to show, but there was no room.
Yeah.
And for many other features, like T-strings, whether or not I wanted to show the string replace performance improvements or other features in the IDE. But yeah, that's. Yep. We already went way above the 1 hour that we originally were considering, and we can't abuse of your patience.
Yeah. So, and then we've covered this quite a bit in the past, the differences between DataSnap and EMS and what those things are. And so now with the naming RAD server versus DataSnap, again, if you want a pre-built stack that's only REST JSON that allows you to focus on building endpoints and integrating IoT devices, that's turnkey, that does user management, device management, push notifications, so on. RAD server, EMS fits very nicely in there. DataSnap, if you want to build it all yourself, by still providing endpoints, if you want to use TCP or HTTP, HTTPS, or REST, you have all those choices. But again, I think for me, DataSnap is you build it all yourself from these reusable classes and components and so on. EMS with analytics and user management. It's a whole turnkey solution that you can then focus on building endpoints. Serena and Marco, other things to add?
Well, I think with the addition of ThingPoint and the ThingPoint Edge service, it really expands that offering that we introduced, in prior releases. Now you're able to easily expand your IoT systems and setups using ThingPoint. So as I mentioned earlier, for example, you can have a ThingPoint application running on a Mac in a refrigeration facility, for example, and you could have a bunch of different IoT devices connected to it, for example, temperature sensors over Bluetooth LE, and they could be connected over Bluetooth LE to that ThingPoint application in your facility. And then you could set up triggers so that you're able to define criteria that you want to use to be able to send back notifications, for example, trigger push notification via EMS to the facility manager, and be able to manage the deltas and be able to actually process the data so that you're not constantly sending back zero values, for example, that you're only looking at the changes between the temperature and the building, for example. So the ThingPoint Edge service is a great addition to our EMS offering, and I think it's something you're going to really like once you try it out. It's installed with the product and works very well with our IoT offering and the new IoT device components that you can install through Get It.
The other thing I put a note in there is we're going to cover more enterprise-focused areas on May 5th. And the community calendar, if you go to the community calendar, you'll see those dates and times, the same, 6 a.m., 11 a.m., 5 p.m. on Thursday, May 5th. We're going to cover RAD Server, we're going to edge points, we're going to cover YAML and Swagger and all of those things that tie into doing more with RAD Server. We're going to cover more about FireDAC and SQL databases and MongoDB and IoT connections to the RAD Server and so on. So join us May 5th. Choose your favorite time. There's a question here again, what are our plans about BAS? We're still supporting Convey. We're still supporting Parse. We're still supporting App42 by Shep Hertz. And then we have an EMS provider as well. People are downloading Parse. It's open source by Facebook, and they're going to be putting up Parse-based systems. And you can use the Parse components and our backend as a service components. Serena has a whole set of tutorials on her blog. Just search Serena DuPont BAS.
In fact, the other day I was at an Amazon event, and I was asking if they don't have, because they do have a mobile, a technology to create mobile backend, but it's fairly complex to set up and configure. Basically, you have to take all of the building blocks, glue them together with some configuration and some code, and eventually you get an entire backend system. But again, it's not really kind of ready to use. I was asking that, but I mean, don't you have anything any plan to build something similar to Parse? And the answer I got was no, but we do have plans to host Parse. I mean, provide ready-to-use Parse hosting. So that's Amazon, which is a fairly large company for web services. I guess many others will probably follow up. So Parse as a technology is not going away. We'll see if it makes inroads in terms of customers usage services, what price point it ends up being, but it's an important technology to keep supporting. And it's good, it can scale more than like anything else. So it's an interesting option.
And how about one last question, Marco? It's more about how things get into the Get It library. We've put the IoT things in. We've worked with some partners to put open source projects and MVPs to put other things in. But it's...
Yeah, just send me an email, and there are some instructions online. Otherwise, I can point you to the right steps. For now, we are only hosting our own components or open source free components. I mean, it could be any license, any model. We don't have a specific limitation on that. In the future, we plan expanding with the option of actually buying or paying components that are provided by third parties in a store-like configuration, but that's not in the current product.
Let's see, on things like the Bluetooth LE devices, there was a question about do they work on all platforms?
It depends on the device. So as you're opening up the application the demo application. There is actually an info button on the demo application, and we've added a lot of good helpful content to that depending on the particular device. And there's also documentation on the doc wiki that you can look at. Generally, in most cases, they work on all the platforms, but there are some devices that were specifically designed by the manufacturer for mobile. So in those cases, a lot of times what can happen is that they're only supported on mobile. But in a lot of cases, I would say most of the devices are supported on 3 or 4 platforms, so that would be iOS, Android, Windows, and Mac, and some devices are only supported on mobile, but that's indicated usually if you click on the info button in the actual demo application that's provided and open up after you install a component, and it's also shown to you if you look at the documentation.
If you're just working at the Bluetooth LE level, you can set a longer timeout. I use the Explore Devices LE. I did that, a skill sprint last month or the month before on spelunking Bluetooth devices, and the Explore Devices LE is a great way to play around with the devices and see what they have without starting to write code. What I found though is on Discover devices, set the timeout a little longer. Some of the devices don't send out information to say, hey, I'm here at the right, at some normal intervals. So best do that. As far as Ultimate moves to Architect, so contact our sales office or reselling partners, and they'll talk to you about what happens. Ultimate, the Architect now has DB Power Studio and ER Studio Developer Edition, so Ultimate goes away and becomes Architect. Azure services like DocumentDB, same as MongoDB. We have MongoDB support right now, and we've updated the APIs on the Cloud API for different Azure releases and Amazon APIs. So we're always looking at other things too. There was some discussion earlier about another NoSQL database that was supposed to be Mongo. Maybe somebody just answered that because it disappeared.
They're asking if we're going to do DocumentDB, and so I said put in a feature request for that.
There was someone here who's saying x64 extended is 2 bytes smaller. Can you elaborate why? Well, x64, if you're talking about extended floating point, that's the Microsoft standard. We covered that, years ago. That we use the 10-byte floating point on 64-bit Windows because that's what Microsoft supports. Versus the sort of traditional in the past when we were using things like floating point emulators and floating point chips. Win64 uses 10 bytes. So we do 2 since exe2, right? That was when we did the first 64-bit compilers. So you can go way back to exe2 and look at the discussion about 10-byte extended. It's to match up the Windows API. Sensor tag, we have a component for sensor tag, Ed. That's the TI sensor tag, and we have a component for that that's in the IoT devices, so you should get 10.1 Berlin and check out install the TI sensor tag, and then you can use the property for temperature and other things that the sensor tag provides. So you really ultimately have to test several devices, and we've got other devices in there. I don't know if was there a Fitbit? I don't have a Fitbit device.
No, because the Fitbit is a different type of a device. It doesn't fit into the standard BLE and Z-Wave categories.
Yeah, they encrypt it so that you can't get access to it. You have to use the REST API.
Correct.
Yeah, I've got a couple of those. I've got an oximeter and a blood sugar monitor by iHealth Labs, and the only way I get it to work is they have their own proprietary app that talks to the device, and then it stores the data in a cloud storage that's free, and then you can use REST client library calls to get to it. So Z-Wave, there's a Z-Wave component. Well, actually, we have a Vera component that talks to a Vera box, and the Vera box then talks Z-Wave to different devices. I'll be doing a blog post. It might take me 2 weeks. Maybe soon, 2 weeks because I'm off next week. I've got a Vera box DERA, and I've got Z-Wave door lock and Z-Wave smart switch that I have a light connected to. So I'll show you that, but you can go up to the Get a Package Manager from 10.1 Berlin, and you can see that there's also, I put in the chat window 2 links, again, one for ThingConnect, and in there it talks about Z-Wave, that link in the doc wiki, and then there's the Thing devices, and you can go down and look for different door locks and so on. Again, for us, we're talking to via the box, and then from the box it does the right things to make the Z-Wave radio calls from the box to the device, whatever that device is. So